I'm Dr. Holliday here with ND Direct Docs. So excited about who I have here with me today. This is Dr. April Krowel. She's with the Brain Center in McCordsville, Indiana, and she does therapy for patients who have dementia or are caregivers for people who have dementia. And both Dr. Moore and I have a long history of having patients who are caregivers of someone who has dementia. And we've been talking with her and would love to share with you all some of the tips that she has taught us about if you are a caregiver of someone with dementia, how you can help them and help yourself.
Thank you for having me again. um, so yeah, absolutely. I do obviously the testing here at the Center for Dementia, but then I also do caregiver um, therapy, dementia therapy. Just to touch a little bit on the dementia piece, there is a good chunk of time for people who have the early stages of dementia where they may or may not know that they are in decline. And so sometimes those folks will really have some emotional stuff going on about being a burden to their family members. And so it's really a nice way to really normalize what's happening and validate their feelings, and bringing the caregiver, spouse, trusted adult, whoever that is, who's caring for them, bring them in on the process is really helpful too for those specific problems related to dementia for the person experiencing it. And there's a certain point where it's not beneficial anymore, and then we discontinue therapy. But that initial stage is sometimes really important to help educate and validate those experiences. So.
Mhm.
Um, but for caregivers, I do something a little different than other folks around here, I think. I offer this service specifically for caregivers, no matter who they are. If they have a family member, a loved one, then you're welcome to come into the clinic and get some therapy or consultation, is what I sometimes refer to it as. But it's really thinking about what to do for yourself. Because if you can't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of your loved one who has dementia, because dementia is a lot of work for the person who's experiencing it, but also the person taking care of them. So that's my number one thing, is respite if you can get it. Really getting in with some of these other aging organizations is really also important. That can help. Again, with that respite, there are places that will come in for a little while you go grocery shopping, for instance. And sometimes people don't like to grocery shop, but it is a little bit of time away to kind of regroup and refresh, and then you can go back, rested, that sort of thing. There's adult daycare centers, which sounds a little demeaning just saying it, but they really do a good job, I think. Most of them do a good job of really providing these services and stimulation for their brains all day, and being able to take care of them in a different way than just maybe sitting at home in a chair because you have to go run some errands. So, and then worrying about where they're going to be, which you're not going to relax if you're worrying. So it's nice to have them in a safe place. um, and then there are some behavioral strategies that we can do for someone with dementia. My number one rule is don't argue with anybody who has dementia, because you're going to lose. That is something that's hard to not do in the moment, I think, because I think that people really want to be like, well, no, you aren't in your childhood home, mom, or in your childhood home, dad. This is my house and this is where you live. But for someone with dementia, they're thinking way back in the past. And so they might want to be in their childhood home and they don't recognize any of the surroundings, and then they might get afraid. And then you're going to see some behavior sometimes when you get afraid, just like you and I. When we're afraid or anxious, sometimes we act out. And it's the same with someone with dementia. They're not recognizing where they are, and that's usually the most common one I think I hear. Even with my own grandmother, my mom was saying that she said she wants to go home. She said she wants to go home, and I'm like, well, she's not recognizing that this is her home. She's talking about her childhood home. And the biggest key there is to recognize whatever emotion they're experiencing, no matter what it is that they're experiencing, and really honing in on that emotion. And then validating that feeling in whatever way that you need to, and then redirecting. So that's usually the way to go if you don't want medication for the person. Sometimes you have to have medication, but I like to think of different ways that we can work to calm someone down without those medications, because you and I both know that as you get older, you have balance problems. Those medications will put you off balance. And if you fall, in addition to, and you break your hip and you have dementia, it's just going to be a big mess. So, there's behavior strategies that we can go through, in the office. That's sort of where I do the consults. And then if it's really stressful, then we can do therapy and work with that as well. So.
Wondering about the maybe giving an example of validating and then redirecting. So are you saying like, let's say that you have a loved one with dementia and they're feeling very frustrated, kind of like what you're saying about wanting to go home, saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Fred. I know that you're feeling very frustrated." So
Right.
then naming that emotion that they're feeling because you want to go home, but do you tell them that this is their home or
No,
how?
no, yeah. You're spot on with with naming the emotion, because it's they feel it, and but they may not be able to say that they're frustrated, or it just comes out as acting out. So yes, absolutely. Fred, grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, whomever. Um, I I know that you're frustrated because you want to feel, a lot of times what it is too is it's the safety piece. So if you and I didn't recognize our surroundings, we might be a little afraid as well. So I know that you're frustrated. I know that seems scary, where we are right now. But I have this activity for, like, and be excited about, like, I have this activity or I have this other thing to do. Naming the emotion, hopefully getting it right. They'll tell you in their own ways if you're wrong. But it really is taking that time to sit with them, think and really listen to what they're saying, and what they're saying underneath what they're acting out as. And with all this to say that a lot of times there's a good fair amount of people who don't act out and they don't have these behaviors, but when they do, it can be really stressful and frustrating for the person taking care of them. And having these different strategies to be able to work with them is really important.
Um, do you have any tips as far as helping someone sleep?
Yeah. So sometimes we will see, and I imagine you have this in your clinic too, where there are medicines that are needed.
Mhm.
Whether it's a prescription sleep med or an over-the-counter, supplement. But there are other things that happen with people who are older, and with such as sleep apnea, or a lot of times they'll have like sundowners too, where they get their sleep cycles are all messed up. So you'll see that as well. But the my biggest concern in my office whenever someone comes in is sleep apnea, and um, whether or not they're wearing their CPAP. And so I usually break from my interview if they say they're not, and take my evaluator hat off and go right into soapbox. And I tell them, this is my soapbox, but you have to wear your CPAP. If the results come back that you're fine in my office, but you have sleep apnea and you're not wearing your CPAP, that's just asking for vascular dementia. It's the same, it's very similar to like uncontrolled diabetes. So people who have neuropathy, they don't feel that in their brains. So there's no pain receptors in our brains, but if you're feeling that pain in your extremities, then it's also happening in your brain. So that's also a soapbox, but we can talk about that in a different segment. But sleep apnea, it's the memory centers are the deepest part of our brain. So if oxygen is not flowing in the brain effectively and efficiently, then those are the brain cells that are dying. And then you're gonna be asking for a dementia later on.
Okay. Uh, what do you have any general recommendations for someone when, because you mentioned sundowning, when you're having a loved one with dementia who has a big issue with sundowning? Is there anything that you can do other than medicines to kind of help them stay in bed?
Um, you can do your best to try to help their sleep cycle, sometimes it's just, maybe that supplement, like, that might be prescribed, but just,
Mhm,
suggested, an extended release melatonin, for instance,
mhm,
those might help. But if those don't help, usually what happens is you will have to be the one to change your schedule.
mhm,
And so that's also a very good point, because that's also something that if you have a job during the day, how are we going to do that and stay up all night and sustain that? So that's where some of these other organizations who have nursing, or respite workers who can come in and stay up with them all night. There's plenty of people who love that night shift, that and so they can stay up with them while you get some sleep, or come in for a few hours just so you can get a little stretch of sleep, is probably because is probably going to be like the best bet for. We don't usually ask our dementia patients to change for us. We have to adjust, and that's where that respite comes in. That's where that extra help comes in, just for our own sanity as well.
okay. How do you recommend finding some of those services? Do you contact Secoa, or is there another group that you can that can help direct you?
Yeah, so if you're in Marion County, and maybe some surrounding areas, Socoa is absolutely, my go-to, recommendation. They're fabulous. Marion County specifically, there's a organization that's also a nonprofit, called Families First. They have a senior division, if you will, and they specifically make sure that people aren't being exploited, because
Mhm,
that's a whole other issue that we can talk about. Yeah, so they make sure that whoever's coming into the home isn't trying to steal from them, or they will stay with them. They will shop for them, those sorts of things, which are really important, especially in the early stages where they might still be able to go out and do things, but they might need some extra support or help. But they're at the same time they're also still fairly vulnerable to scams and that sort of thing, because they've already crossed into dementia.
mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Toccoa and Families First are my two that I always recommend in Marion County specifically.
Okay. So, if you're a caregiver of someone with dementia, you recommend just getting extra resources because it's so hard to handle all of this by yourself. You need a break also because caring for someone with dementia can be a 24/7 job. Yep.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I mean, if you have siblings, taking shifts, that sort of thing, let's say mom's got dementia, dad's, same age, right? So he's going to have his sleep. So maybe he takes the day shift, and then the kids can come over and help out during the middle of the night. It really becomes more of a village, you know, problem, if you, not a problem, but it becomes a village sort of solution there.
mhm.
And I feel terribly for people who are by themselves,
Yeah.
caregiving, and that's when respite is really mostly important.
Yeah.
But we all need a break, even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I really liked what you said. That was very helpful about the sleep and that you don't try to change a person with dementia. You kind of change with them to just aid them. And then, yeah, just how you said, like, don't argue and validate their feelings. That can kind of help redirect them and prevent some arguments. Do you have any other general tips or recommendations for caregivers?
As long just take care of yourself, even if not able to do the rest, but make sure that you're eating, make sure that you're getting fresh air. A lot of the more general, things that we tell everybody, I mean, we tell new parents,
Yeah.
like, you can, if you're not sleeping, if you're not taking care of yourself, then you can't take care of your children. It's similar to when our parents are aging or our loved ones are aging. We can't be efficiently caring for them if we're not taking care of ourselves. If our battery is depleted, there's no other energy we can give. So just making sure that we're mindful of taking care of ourselves is really important across the lifespan.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. This is so helpful. And the Brain Center uh, is available as an option for therapy. Again, if you're either a caregiver or you have a loved one who has dementia, and you guys take most forms of insurance, correct?
Absolutely. Yep. We take, Medicaid, Medicare, and then all the other major insurances, for the most part. I think there might be a smattering of a few that we don't take. but for the most part, we've got them all, which also kind of makes us a little unique over here on this side of town.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.